Welcome to the Introduction to Lifelong Learning Institute. Lifelong Learning Institute is a nonprofit organization at UW Green Bay. We have a presence in the Green Bay, Manitowoc, and Sheboygan areas. Our members come from as far north as Crivets to as far south as Sheboygan. Lifelong Learning Institute, or LLI, is a friendly, member-led nonprofit program offering non-credit educational enrichment classes and activities to adults of all ages and all educational backgrounds. Most of our members are retired, but you don't have to be. Our classes typically run from 10 to noon or 1 to 3 p.m. Courses are offered on a wide variety of topics and are taught by local volunteers. In this slide, you'll see pictures across the bottom, the first one of which Nona is instructing Gloria on tatting. Tatting is a long-running class for lifelong learning. The second picture is a fairly new class. It was held at first last fall in Manitowoc. The Historical Society invited some LLI members to a blacksmithing class. They were able to make shepherd's hook for their gardens. The third slide is a group of lifelong learning members took a tour and a walk along the Mariner Trail. The fourth image is of Bren Sabelski. Bren invited about 50 lifelong learning members to her studio in Algoma and did a sculpture of an LLI member. The fourth picture is of the Viking House here on the UW Green Bay campus. And the final picture is a group of lifelong learning members at the West of the Lake Gardens in Manitowoc. As you know, due to the COVID-19 health pandemic, our society is being forced to think differently and creatively while we continue to move forward. LLI is no exception to this. So prior to this pandemic, we had over 200 classes scheduled, venues booked, everything set to go for the fall semester. So we did have to regroup and do some quick changing of our classes, and we're happy to say we can offer the following for the fall semester. We are able to offer 99 live online classes, 18 pre-recorded classes, and 4 outdoor classes for a total of 121 offerings for the fall semester. As soon as we can safely for our presenters and LLI members get back into the classroom, we will do so. LLI membership. Our current membership fee is $125, and that's for 2 semesters worth of classes, so a full year of classes with Lifelong Learning Institute. We publish a catalog of courses twice a year, once in July for the fall semester and again in November for the spring semester. And membership with Lifelong Learning Institute includes hundreds of courses to choose from, invitations to all LLI social gatherings, priority notice to LLI online fall and spring catalog offerings, newsletter subscription, access to our lending library of educational DVDs, LLI day trips and special events, and travel opportunities. And again, during the pandemic, a couple of these options are not available at this current time. LLI has offered classes anything from art to Zumba in past semesters. We offer more than 300 courses and activities every year to help our members stay mentally, socially, and physically active. And the course categories that you see listed here are the course categories that are being offered, classes being offered this fall. We do have over 1,000 lifelong learning members, and what keeps members interested, involved in lifelong learning over the years is the variety and number of classes that we do offer. There are over 600 lifelong learning programs in the United States. Facts about our organization. Lifelong Learning at UW Green Bay was founded in 1991. We're currently 1,080 members strong. We have a presence in UW Green Bay communities of Green Bay, Manitowoc, and Sheboygan. We currently have 1 paid staff member who is supported by over 300 volunteers. And volunteers not only benefit from being able to attend classes, a lot of our volunteers get a lot out of volunteering for our organization, whether it be on the curriculum committee, recruiting new courses and presenters, being a front desk volunteer, coordinating classes, or being a member of one of our committees, such as our finance committee, publicity committee, social committee, or curriculum committee. Lifelong Learning offers many one-session classes, which is 1 2-hour class session with a break, but we also offer many multiple session classes, which is 1 2-hour session per week for multiple weeks. Our classes, again, as I said, typically begin at 10 a.m. or 1 p.m. Our instructors consist of many LLI members with a wide variety of background. They also are community members from Green Bay, Manitowoc, Sheboygan, and elsewhere. We do have several retired and active college professors that instruct for us. So people with all sorts of backgrounds. We have doctors, lawyers, judges, financial consultants, counselors, undertakers, etc., all willing to share their expertise and passion. And as I mentioned, only one paid staff member. Our presenters volunteer their time also. Since 1991, we have never paid an instructor. They do it all on a volunteer basis. We do hold classes on the UW Green Bay campuses of Green Bay, Manitowoc, and Sheboygan. However, especially in the Green Bay area, we do have to rent classroom space. So we do use the Neville Museum occasionally. We use the Mothy Center on the UW Green Bay campus. We rent space from several of the local community centers and also churches. The class formats that we have, you'll see several different formats on this slide. In the top left picture, piano. Our piano instructor currently, Heidi, has agreed to do 2 of her piano classes online. So that'll be offered this fall. We will have many of our traditional lecture type classes online. And we'll even have a couple of our discussion-based classes online. The ones we are offering this fall online are Books and You, our Continuing Issues. That's been a popular long-running class also. And we're also going to do Writing Your Memoirs online. We typically offer several different performance type classes. We offer local tours. And a couple local tours that we're going to continue to do, but only online, is the Green Bay Packers. Instead of our members going at Lambeau Field, the Packers are going to do a live tour online for us behind the scenes. A couple of our homeless shelters in the Green Bay area are going to give us a virtual tour. Along with the Rar West Museum in Manitowoc. They're going to give us a behind-the-scenes look at their painting storage room and show us a couple jewels that they have in their collection. Here's a look at several of the hands-on classes that we typically offer. We have our painting, our oil painting, watercolor, drawing. So those are put on hold temporarily. The top right is a henna class that's traditionally offered. Chair caning, and again, several of those types of classes are put on hold. We offer cooking classes, scones and bread making, very popular, and then eating classes. Just kidding. What you see here on this slide is a lot of our socials that we have, and I'd like to point out the top middle picture. Traditionally, but that's been put on hold for a bit too, is our breakfast. Any LLI member can meet, they meet at the Bay Family Restaurant on the last Wednesday of each month, just a gathering, pay for your own breakfast, but it's a nice way for our members to meet outside the classroom. A little bit more on our social gatherings. We do have a new member welcome that's scheduled for the end of August, and this is a good opportunity for new members to learn just a little bit more about our program. We have our fall kickoff, our winter social, and our Spring Fling annual meeting. And these are held usually at the Riverside Ballroom, Tundra Lodge, off campus. We offer many physical activities that you see listed here. Our line dancing presenter is hard at work recording several different steps for line dancing, and then our members will be able to review this recording all throughout the semester and practice line dancing in the comfort of their own home. We are going to offer ballroom as a live online class. We have a biking class, a hiking class. We have one nature hike and a bird watching class that are scheduled for fall. Speaking of our biking, here's our level 2 biking hills and off-road trails, and our level 3 wheelies on cliffs. Just an attempt to add a little bit of humor to this presentation. We offer a lot of social activities, social classes, to include bridge, board games. Our strategic thinking through games has been popular for years. Dominoes, cribbage, chess, mahjong, all these are real popular. Unfortunately, have to be put on hold due to the virus. So we ask you to consider joining us. A lot of benefits to belonging to Lifelong Learning Institute and taking classes. Staying mentally sharp, get some exercise, learn something new, create something, meet new friends, and take unique trips. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Bob Cook. Bob is going to do a demo class, a class that he's going to give this fall. He's going to give a short look at that class. It's called Bedpan Commandos to Cadet Nurses. Bob? Audio?
Back to the start. Hi, I'm Bob Cook, a retired high school history teacher, and this is my brief and hopefully spectacular vignette of my class on nursing in World War II. We will be talking about the Angels of BATAAN and CORREGIDOR. So in the beginning, let's talk about nursing in general. The average salary for a nurse in 1940 was $70 a month. That was for a 12-hour day, which averaged out to be about 16 cents an hour. And of course, the question, of course, is for a young woman is, why would you ever join the service? Well, for one thing, your pay was higher. You got $88.60 a month. You had the opportunity to travel and to have some adventure in different parts of the country or even foreign countries. Please remember, this is the late 1930s, early 1940s, when many young ladies did not venture very far from home. You problems in the military, you only had a temporary relative rank from second lieutenant to major, and you couldn't go any higher. Relative rank meant that you wore a uniform, but you did not have military status or privileges. So that means, for example, you didn't have to be saluted by an enlisted man. I'm sure that wasn't a huge disadvantage, but it's there. Pay was only half of what a man of the same rank would make, plus he got additional pay for each dependent that he had. If you wanted to really travel and see the world, you could get an overseas assignment. In those days, most of those would have been in the Far East or in Latin America, Central America. Philippines is a classic example. You had a modern hospital, a good climate for the vast majority of the year anyway. Very good dining. You had a number of officers' clubs, which in those days were heavily subsidized. And you had great meals, fantastic service. You had decent quarters. And so what more could you ask for? Oh yeah, there were lots of eligible bachelors. All those second lieutenants and first lieutenants and captains were all graduates of either the military academy at West Point or the Naval Academy at Annapolis. This is three young ladies enjoying themselves at what looks to be an officers' club. And you can see they're all wearing their uniforms. They've got their insignia rather, indicating that they're nurses. So in order to apply for one of these plum assignments, you had to have at least 2 years of service. And an assignment in the Philippines, for example, in 1940 was for 2 years, and it was a desirable assignment. That, of course, will change in 1942 with the Japanese invasion. And you might ask yourself, now that we from a hindsight know that the Japanese are going to invade the Philippines and attack the U.S., why in the world would anybody ever want to go to the Philippines in 1940? Well, quite frankly, because it was such a great assignment and nobody saw the clouds of war on the horizon. Less than 3 hours after Pearl Harbor, the first Japanese planes attacked the Philippines. I would be happy to tell you that American planes had all been dispersed to various fields in the Philippine Islands, and Japanese air attacks had very little effect on the American air arm in the Philippines, but that would be a lie, as they were all lined up very neatly on the tarmac. It was a fantastic set of targets for the Japanese, kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. 2 weeks after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese invaded the Philippines at Lingayen Gulf, which is 130 miles away from Manila. The Japanese are going to cover that 130 miles in a very short period of time, because on Christmas night of 1941, Manila is going to be evacuated to BATAAN and CORREGIDOR. The nurses are going to remain in those two garden spots until the final surrender of CORREGIDOR on May 6th of 1942. It would be great if we had put a bunch of supplies at either BATAAN and CORREGIDOR to allow people to hold out for a long period of time. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Japanese bombed and strafed hospitals, which makes life difficult for your medical personnel. Initially, the chief medical officer ordered all personnel to remain in the operating room tent during the attacks. He later changed his mind and decided to have the patients strapped to the OR tables, anesthesia machines turned off, and all the medical personnel to find the nearest foxhole. He lost too many medical personnel with the first order. It's also helpful to note that a large number of these officers had never seen combat. Senior officers had in World War I, but many of the other officers had never. At the end of April, 6th April, only 65 of the original 1,600 beds in BATAAN were still standing. On April 8th, those troops who could move and Army nurses needed to care for the new casualties were transferred to CORREGIDOR. The rest were left on BATAAN to be taken prisoner by the Japanese. It's important to note at this point that BATAAN is deep jungle warfare. We were not prepared for that kind of warfare. The troops did not have the kind of supplies that were needed, didn't necessarily have the shots and medicines that were needed. And many of these troops we suffered as many casualties from malaria and dengue fever as we did from the Japanese. The final surrender occurs. There are 67 Army nurses who became Japanese prisoners. There were also US Navy nurses along with them. This is one of the hospital corridors on CORREGIDOR. CORREGIDOR is a rock, literally, and tunnels have been drilled inside the rock, and you can see the concrete walls, concrete that's been put on the walls. This was hot, it was humid, it didn't have a tremendous amount of air circulation, and you stayed in there because going outside to have a smoke or to talk to somebody could reduce your chances of a long life dramatically. There was one group of 4 or 5 nurses who went out to have a smoke, and a Japanese shell hit nearby, and there were 4 or 5 nurses that never returned. This is a field hospital on BATAAN. I apologize for the quality of the photograph, but you also need to realize that the vast majority of the pictures that were taken about the conditions in BATAAN and CORREGIDOR never survived the war. The Japanese were not noted for allowing you to take a camera into the prison camp so you could take pictures of the wonderful and marvelous way they were treating you. Army nurses were sent to the SANTO TOMAS internment camp in Manila. That was basically a college campus. All of the American citizens, French citizens, Belgian citizens, Dutch citizens that were on the Philippine Islands at the time the Japanese captured the islands in Manila were interned in that particular internment camp. So this was not primarily a place for American military prisoners, but a place for civilian internees. Navy nurses were later transferred to Los Banos, which is a POW camp. The nurses that were at Santo Tomas were commanded by Captain Maud C. Davison. She was a 20-year veteran of the Army Nurse Corps. She forced those nurses to wear uniforms, and she enforced military discipline. I'm here to tell you that if you had taken a poll of the nurses 1942 or early 43, she would not have been the most popular person in Santo Tomas. But as they all look back on it, not very long after they were freed, they realized that what she did for them by forcing them to be disciplined and to concentrate on their jobs was credited with saving many of their lives. In 2001, she was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Service Medal. This took an awful lot of maneuvering. She had been dead for about 10 years by the time she was awarded that medal, and one could wonder why she wasn't awarded it earlier, and that would take at least 2 hours to discuss. November 1944, the nutrition in the Santo Tomas dropped to 960 calories a day. January of 1945, the total nutrition calorie was dropped to 700 calories a day. Average person there lost 30% of their body weight. Those of you that know me know that I could lose 30% of my body weight, and it wouldn't be the end of the world, but it certainly would be for the average Army nurse. Captain Davison lost 76 pounds. She dropped from 156 to 80 pounds. Interesting as you compare these folks, the nurses after the service on BATAAN and CORREGIDOR, that they had all the same service-connected disabilities as male South Pacific POWs had. So they suffered similar privations. Santo Tomas is liberated on February 3rd of 1945, and Los Banos is liberated on the 23rd of February. The nurses were awarded the Bronze Star and a Presidential Unit Citation. There's a picture of the liberation at Santo Tomas, nurses in a truck, and the nurses, of course, very happily greeting the soldiers that liberated them. This is Los Banos liberation, and if you're not a believer that they really suffered that much privation, I suggest you take a look at this young woman that I got my cursor on now, if you can see it, and you can see how that uniform, was such as it is, hangs on her. She's got she's lost a tremendous amount of weight. On April 9th of 1980, a bronze plaque was dedicated at the Mount Samat Shrine. The shrine is to the men who survived BATAAN and CORREGIDOR, And this is a plaque they put up for the nurses, and I'll let you read it, because it's not easy for me to read. And that basically concludes the brief summary of this class. It's a 3-session class. We'll spend some time discussing the situation of nursing in this country before the war. You also need to realize that we had 46,000 nurses in the military at the end of World War II, and there were about 7,000 in the armed forces at the beginning of the war. And we have to find some way to replace those 40,000 nurses in civilian society, and that's going to be the portion of the course that deals with the cadet nurses. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
So we appreciate everyone spending time with us today. You can get more information. We really welcome you to visit our website. It's www.uwgb.edu/LLI. We hope you visit us soon. Thank you.